Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining this lecture. One of the points that have always preoccupied human intelligence is that concerning the nature of reality. For lunar thinking, that is the Western, reality is of the order of matter. In addition, matter defines the horizon of scientific knowledge beyond which everything is superstition. For African traditional thinking, solar thinking, reality is spiritual, and this perception of fact is a force that allowed our ancestors to solve easily problems, to heal.
Welcome to the channel Zilalowa of Dr. Yaluka. To begin, please subscribe and tick the notification bell in order not to miss our videos. Thank you for joining.
The theme of our lecture is spiritual healing and the unreality of matter. But before addressing this, we will first proceed to the usual introductions. We will first introduce to you the lecturer that I am and his academy, which is Njidalowa. And we will explain through systematic natural theology the, the unreality of matter. And finally, we will develop our theme. I'm Dr. Chatezol Bantadialuka. I hold the PhD honor from Trinity Graduate School of Apologetics and Theology from Kerala in India. Therefore, I'm an apologist. As such, I specialized in the defense of African traditional spirituality and epistemology. And I founded an academy called Nzila Loa. Nzila Loa comprises two branches: an academic branch called Institut des Sciences Animiques. Within the setting of this branch, we conduct scientific researches, and we have published 32 scientific papers and 15 books that are available at Amazon.com. Ndilalowa comprises also an initiatory branch, which is called also Ndilalowa. Within this initiatory branch, we introduce African people to the divine practice of the religion bequeathed by our ancestors. I speak of divine practice. Few people realize that there are two kinds of practices of African traditional religion: the divine and the human. The divine practice is the practice of a minority of African, which minority is found among the Bantu ethnics. This practice is based on this purification of thoughts and on the sacre of holy ancestors, those who abide in water, which means in a word of purity. The purpose of the divine practice, the first purpose is to enable the initiate to become back a Naziris, a child of God he has been in heaven. The second one is to develop a power that will perpetuate it within the frame of human practice. The third aim is to heal through the purification of thought. And the last one is to fight witchcraft through the means of law. So those are the aims of the divine practice of African traditional religion. As to the human practice, it is the one we commonly see within the setting of African traditional spiritual culture. Thus, it includes the Voodoo, the Santeria, the Palomonte, the Ifa, etc. This practice uses the power bequeathed or originally developed in the divine practice and transmitted through faith as the sacre of the spirits of nature, called in the Congo religion, Bakulu Banteke. The power thus transmitted can be used in good or in evil ways. However, the evil way should normally be forbidden. This power in the human mystery, the human practice, which is the practice of the majority of African people, is used in order to organize, elevate, and protect society. So the two practices works together for the benefit of African traditional civilization. Thus, within the setting of Africa of Ntilalowa, we introduce the Black people to the divine practice of African traditional religion, which practice relies a, on religion as an exact science. Now, Ntilalowa is a Kemetic academy through its reference to ancient Egypt. However, we are different from the traditional Kemites. Ours, our movement is neo-Kemetism. What is the difference between both movements? Traditional Kemetism began in the United States in 1970s. It is an eclectic movement. It used induction and speculation to reconstruct the religion of ancient Egypt, of ancient Egypt spirituality. It is anti-biblical movement, and it is like the other religions of the world, a set of beliefs. Neo-Kemetism, our movement, started in the year 2008 with the discovery of the Kemetic cosmological argument. This argument is an exact science because it is a set of deductive coherent truths. Neo-Kemetism uses deduction and comparative study in order to establish the congruence between this natural systematic theology and the religion of ancient Egypt, Sumer, and the Congo religion, Book Congo. And this congruence is a proof that Book Congo is the continuity of the religion of ancient Egypt. And because we can use comparative study in order to prove what belongs and doesn't belong to Africa, we are not an anti-biblical movement. Simon Kimbangu said that the spiritual principles that are in the Bible have been stolen from our ancestors. So we have the right to claim them. As we said before, the title of our lecture is spiritual healing, and the unreality of matter. Since its training in ancient Egypt, one of the approaches of the Greek elite was to distance itself from Egyptian thinking that affirmed that the freedom of the soul from the body. This freedom demonstrated for these Africans that reality is of the order of the invisible. Reality is spiritual. Addressing the question of the nature of reality, the Bantu people of Katanga, a Democratic Republic of Congo, explained to classic temples that the corporeal nature is only an appearance, and that the reality of human being is of the order of the invisible. It is spiritual. Today, it is doubtful for many Africans after having been embarked willy-nilly in lunar thinking, that is, in the materialistic thinking of the whites. It is doubtful for them to believe, like their ancestors, that reality is spiritual. There is therefore a need for a truly scientific and indisputable approach to prove the nature of reality as being spiritual. This approach is none other than the Kemetic cosmological argument. For the sake of this lecture, this argument can be introduced in the following manner. I'm an individual being. You are individual beings. Therefore, this temporal universe in which we abide is an individual entity. Being an individual entity, this temporal universe is the effect of an individual cause. The individual nature of this cause begs the existence of other similar causes that can be potential and effective. Here, let us introduce an hypothesis which will be demonstrated later. The hypothesis is that every creation exists in its effects. Now, if we consider an entity which includes all the effective and potential causes, we have a being which is the greatest possible one. Because every creation you can imagine will exist in its creator, and the creator will exist in this latter entity. Therefore, this entity is none other than the Most High, the Supreme Being. It does ensure that the Supreme Being is indivisible and immutable. Because if he were not, there might be a principle of the mutability and the divisibility of the Most High. And that principle must be greater than the Supreme Being. That is greater than the greatest possible being, which is impossible. Therefore, the Supreme Being is absolutely immutable and indivisible. Here, let me ask a question. Where does our temporal universe exist in relation to the Most High? It cannot be within the Most High because if it were at the moment of creation, at the moment of the occurrence of creation, something new will appear in God, in the Most High, and the Most High will change, which is impossible because the Most High is absolutely immutable. The temporal universe cannot be also outside of the Most High because if it were then added to the Most High, it will result in an entity greater than the greatest possible being. So we seem to be in a quandary. But now let me consider the case of someone who is in this studio. Now it is announced that Mr. Wilson, who is in the studio, has a car. His car, however, is not neither in the studio nor outside of the studio. The answer is that the car is in his mind. Therefore, the temporal universe is in the temporal consciousness of the Creator, which is the proof of our hypothesis. According to the nature of the Supreme Being, has the greatest possible being, all reality is included in him and is spiritual. Because if there were a reality outside of the Most High, that reality added to the Most High will result in an entity greater than the Most High, which is impossible. So, reality is spiritual. Reality is in the Most High. The temporal universe or matter is only a limited or reversed perception of reality. The Kemetic cosmological argument has shown us that reality is the spirit, God. When we say God, it doesn't mean the Western conception of the Most High. We speak about the supreme being, the ultimate cause, who is transcendent, immutable, and divisible, and thrones above lower divinities that are his manifestations. So we mean the black concept of the Most High, whereby the Most High is called in ancient Egypt the Soul Lord, and in Bukongo, Nzambi Ampungu Tulendo. So we have seen that reality is spiritual. And since the Kemetic cosmological argument is a deduction from true empirical facts, the nature of reality thus asserted is also true. Because in a deduction, it is impossible for the conclusion not to be true when the premises are. There is therefore a problem, the problem of defining what matter is. Matter is the opposite of reality, of spirits. Matter is not a thing, but a false way of seeing the only reality that exists, the spirit and its manifestations. all that really exists in nature, that is, all that is good in it, is the spirit and its manifestations. Matter is only a false way of seeing things where spiritual ideas seems limited or reversed. Seen in this way, reality appears to us as a limited good or an evil. And yet, the Kemetic cosmological argument has demonstrated to us that all is the Most High God Zabiapung Trulendo and his infinite manifestations. Let us illustrate this point with the case of a Congo initiate that we will call simply Ndona. Ndona was an old lady that one day saw a lad coming back too early from school. She inquired about the situation, and the lad said, the little boy said to Ndona, "Oh, I've been chased from school because I didn't pay the tuition. So they dismissed me from the class." Ndona looked at the little boy and opened the corner of his material, which served for her as a purse. He took a bill of 100 francs, which is not enough to buy even an orange. And she told to the lad, "Go and say to the principal, this is what grandma has sent for my tuition." The lad said, "Grandma, it is not enough. They will chase me." But Ndona said, "Go, I'm sending you." So doubtful, the lad was obedient, took the money, and went back to school and gave the money to the principal, saying, "There, this is what grandma sent." To his astonishment, the principal gave him the receipt of the payment of the full tuition, and he was accepted back to school. For the lad, reality was material, limited. But for Donna, reality is spiritual. She was raising his thinking above the material and seeing what really is present, the spirit and its manifestation. This reminds me one of the law of Jehuti, who is called thought by the Greek. He said the little is like the great because every material thing is just a symbol. Reality is always infinite. We must, like Donna, practice seeing the spirit where the bodily senses exhibit matter to us. We must utilize a higher sense of the spiritual sense or the perception of Zambiampungu Tulendo as Talunga, the all in all, the one of which every true being and every true fact is the manifestation. We can illustrate this vision of things by the perception of an aircraft. far away above our heads. This seems to be very small, but we use our sense, our understanding of planes, and we say that is a big aircraft. It contains above 200 people. So for us, there is not a little aircraft and a bigger one. What seems to be a little is the bigger. So that little nature is only an illusion introduced by the distance. So matter is also an illusion introduced by the spiritual distance between human being and the true understanding of the Most High, of Zambi Ampungu Tulendo. Even now, you are composed of all the qualities of God. You are made of infinite intelligence, infinite wisdom, infinite strength, infinite wisdom, infinite love, infinite health, etc. The limitation that you seem to manifest is matter. It is a simple belief, like the small aircraft. It is not a body, but a false way of seeing you, of seeing your true body, which is spiritual, which is an incarnation of infinite spiritual qualities. Let me give you an example how this applies to healing. I know a case of a young lady that we will call Benny. Benny was just married and she was pregnant. At the second month of the pregnancy, she went to the hospital, and without her knowing it, he was given a medicine which purpose was to evacuate the baby. They gave her those suppositories. Her mother said, "I never have been seen a pregnant woman be given suppository as medicine. This is awkward." But Betty insisted on taking them because that was what the physician told her. She took the medicine and the belly began to ache. It was so aching that the next day he began to bleed, which was a sign of the beginning of abortion. Thus he called a spiritual healer. The spiritual healer told her that the baby is under the care of God. And she mentioned also that God is the only life, and life doesn't depend on blood, but the blood depends on life. He told Benny to cling out the truth and know that the life of her baby depends on God, not on the blood. Next day, he began to give solid blood away, but she wasn't afraid, and the healer still stressed the same thing. Now, the healing process includes some steps. The first step is the purification of thought. We purify our thought by realizing that as the image and likeness of God, we have always been pure, we shall always be so, and we are so. Because sin cannot have the power, never had the power to do us good. So after purifying ourselves, we call the holy ancestors. We summon them. And then we present ourselves to them. We deny fear because we know that we are surrounded by holy ancestors. So there is no reason to fear. And now we handle the belief in witchcraft because here in Africa, 90% of our cases are always linked to the belief in witchcraft. So that belief has to be denied by knowing that God is the only true spirit, God is the only true consciousness because He is the only soul, and God is the only true mind. So there is no other mind to send us evil thoughts. And then we make also what is called the warning. After denying the belief in witchcraft, after seeing it as having neither intelligence, power, nor reality, we ask the Lord to open the eyes of the so-called witch that they might know that in reality they are children of God, pure, holy, and they know that witchcraft leads to death right now. So they better quit. So after having done all these preliminaries, we then affirm the true nature of God and the true nature of the human being as the image and likeness of God, as the healers did by affirming that God is life and that life doesn't depend on blood, but the blood depends on life, and that that baby is secure in God's care. He is not in the belly, the mother, but he is in God's care. So the situation was calmed, and when he went back to the hospital, they were astonished that the baby was fine. They asked her, "Did you really take those medicines?" She said, "Yes." So the, the baby has been born. She is now a good daughter. In conclusion, contrary to what Western materialistic thinking suggests, the Kemetic cosmological argument as an exact science shows us that reality is spiritual. It demonstrates that reality is spiritual. Thus, matter is only a limited or reversed way of perceiving spiritual ideas. Matter is a mere belief, and this truth is proof that true healing must be mental and spiritual. Thank you so much.
If you enjoyed this video, please like it and share. More on this subject can be found on my books available at Amazon.